The Wythe County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors that such a meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wythe County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors.
I have a second on the resolution. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Mr. Dalton, is there anything else under other? Work session, we gonna do that now or later?
Well, I don't think Mr. Willis's duties at the hospital today will have an operation and procedures, and I guess let's just do it now so we can go do some work in a minute.
Yeah. All right. I vote for a short break. Amen.
Have a 5-minute recess. Yes. And turn the floor over to Mr. Dalton. That's eating. Oh, okay.
Get started here. Recap of history. Regional Exposition Center purchased the property, the board authorized it, purchased the property sometime in August, I think. First day of September, whatever day. For 1.3 million. We got the deed, part of the deed, we got a little bit more than the 93 acres, I think, because we ended up with the property, including the road. It comes down to the frontage, next to Burger King there, if I remember correctly, Mr. Clark. We went out and videoed the well casing is damaged, part of it's full of sand. So talked to Salem Stone says, go ahead and abandon the well. It's no good with them. They agreed with the assessment, there's not enough water for their purposes. We're continuing on, the water and wastewater department is continuing on with developing the fee structure and trying to get additional information from Salem Stone, what's going to happen. In the meantime, the preliminary tobacco committee met, and hopefully it's confirmed this Wednesday or Thursday that we will get awarded, Wythe County will get awarded $750,000 towards the development of that site. My understanding also is that there's Farm Bureau and some others and the Ag Expo group have committed to providing some funding there. Certain amount of the Ag Expo, they may have 250, 300,000, whatever that dollar. And Farm Bureau, maybe $50,000 to $100,000 for an extended period. Each year they would provide some funding. What Bill is making copies of is the copy of the master plan and a cost estimate. While those numbers that we're talking about add up to 1.1 or 1.2 million, somewhere there that we think we have access to, and probably will have access to here in a few days. The cost estimate is a little bit more than to develop the building itself, more than that. Well, session for today is, we know we have that, we know we own the property. And here's cost estimate, how do we move forward with the financing, construction, borrowing? The staff needs some directions from the Board of Supervisors, it's y'all's group, of where we go after we're awarded the $750,000. $750 doesn't give us the $5 million. And I guess in the meantime, I understand that the Ag Expo Group has agreed to fund a clearing, not really a clearing, but a bush hogging type of operation for the 30-some acres for the initial Ag Expo, or the Expo Center would be.
Well, down there next to the road, they was some pretty big stuff in there. They couldn't bush hog it. What they're doing is grubbing it and just piling it up in piles. That will. Now the stuff that they can bush hog, they're bush hogging, but there's a lot of stuff in there, and there's some wild cherry trees in there. It's pretty good size.
If I can ask just a point of order, I mean, the vote was to buy the land, I understand that. We haven't formally voted on proceeding with anything else, have we?
No, we haven't. That's the reason for the work. I think that's, Gary, what I said, or maybe alluded to, not strongly enough, that we need some direction for staff. If we're gonna be working on, how do we proceed from this point? We made the application, which, from all indications, you will get an award of $750,000.
And that award of $750,000 will come with requirements,
Yes, it'll be,
but we don't know what those requirements are.
I would say that the $750 will be a grant to you towards the completion of the Expo Center.
Well, and that's it? I mean, no job creation, no timelines, no.
No, it's an economic development issue. It'll say that you will, if the presentation and application said we were gonna build a 50,000 square foot building with parking, there'll be an expectation that you build a 50,000 square foot building with parking. What was in the application?
We've already got the match through the purchase of the real estate for that.
For that, and probably got enough for the grant in January for another $750,000.
But what do we do from now? And what do we spend money on? I assume that we're gonna have to have some professional help. Whether it's A&E firm or not an A&E firm. But I guess, Gary, you're right, we've never voted to move forward. We haven't voted to accept the money, but what are the next steps, and what do y'all, as a board, want us to see get accomplished?
Well, that preliminary budget little thing that you gave us, I think maybe 2 meetings ago or something like that, showed a total cost of somewhere over $7 million.
Bill's working on it.
Okay.
I was delaying in the back trying to wait him out. A wise guy told me a long time ago, never let the board, you stand outside the boardroom, let the board talk about you outside. I came back and keep talking. But, yeah, something north of $5 million.
Is that the total, or is that phase one?
That's phase one.
That's like phase one.
Phase one gets you an entrance and parking. Right. And we still don't know what we get from, we made an application with the Land Foundation. What that award will be.
That was for the purpose of the multi-purpose sports fields, though, right?
Right.
That won't go into the construction of the arena, or could it?
Well, that's part of the 5 million.
The sports fields is part of the 5 million.
That whole entrance, et cetera, stormwater will all be part of that.
When do we need to start, and I guess we need to vote on this first, but what about the authority and things like that? And would the grant, is this grant going to be made to the county? Is it going to be made?
The grant is to the county.
County.
Okay.
Yep, when you bought the property, you sort of dictated the future that everything that's property and everything's on it would be with county. Party manage, and the volunteer group would be the fundraising group.
Is the volunteer group or the 501c3, is that basically the Ag Expo committee, or who will kind of, oversee that group? Will that be the county? Will that be the authority? Or what's?
This is how I think it's to be structured, and I think we've discussed it before, but at least the committee has. The board would own all the property and structures. They would lease out to the authority or commission, whatever you want to call it, the property, and they would oversee the day-to-day operation. That group would be appointed anywhere from 5 to 7 or 9 people. The Code of Virginia tells you how many people, a range of people you can put on there. The group that's currently meeting and spearheading this effort is the fundraising group to raise donations, et cetera, to make this project go. They have the seed money of a few $100,000 on it, it's $250, $350, however much money they have. They've got some pledges and additional money, but their purpose is to raise funding. What the discussion's been that they would have a couple or 3 members on that commission, not the majority, but one of their members would always be the extension agent from the county.
2 from their group,
2 from their group. This is
and then the rest.
the rest is appointed full. But the only purpose that group would serve is if the authority says we need $500,000 raised. You need to raise $500,000 and do a capital fundraising and go out and get it. That's their purpose.
But so they kind of get direction from the authority. Is that? I was trying to figure out, because we got to be cohesive in it. You can't have 3 different groups out there.
Operations run group.
Now, in function, I'm talking real dollars here. It seems like to me that the order of business ought to be to get the authority stabilized, decide what we're going to do. Is it going to be 7? One of the questions that I have for you and your sidekick there, does the authority, can they be the building entity? And are they covered by the same rules as the county is? Not unlike what you do with the industrial park and the JIDA.
Well, every municipal entity that you create has some special privileges. Industrial development authorities, their privileges are they can provide money and loans and other incentives to business, industries, commercial, without the constraints we do, or the Board of Supervisors. The board cannot give money to anybody that's individuals, on and on. Commercial industry, you just can't do that. IDAs can do that. They can provide loans and grants and low interest.
Well, let me ask the question more clearly. Would that authority, once it's set up and functional, have the authority to lease to an operating company to actually come in and put on the events and do the day-to-day thing and answering to the board, to that board, not this board, but to the authority, we'll call it? To save a bunch of money, can they also contract or let somebody else build it and modify the cumbersome state procurement requirements? Will an authority have those two options if the board wants it to be that way?
Well, I give my opinion first. I don't believe the authority can do anything that's not included in the creation document that you allow. Whatever, however you specify in that creation document, they've got to follow. I don't think, unless it's an IDA, if this is a recreational authority, they have any means to circumvent or go outside the procurement law than we do. What they could do in the creation document, you could authorize that there be, such as like an airport, an FBO, a fixed-base operator, who would run the day-to-day operation. You could say that in your creation document, that you want a operational group, that they have to bid it out or hire it out. But it's just like at the airport, the FBO, you take proposals from it, and you go about it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's my thoughts on it.
Well, I don't want to belabor this, but in your opinion, if it's in the document, and I don't guess we could call it an FBO, but it would be in function, a fixed operator that can be hired, fired, terminated at the pleasure of this controlling authority, because you don't want a long-term contract with somebody that's not going to make it profitable. Now, can they also be encumbered with responsibility of building, which I truly believe and know that if the thing's structured right, we can save $1.5 million.
That's a county attorney question. I'm not gonna answer.
I don't know the answer to that question. You know, you can set up the authority to govern whatever you're giving them the authority to govern. So if they're gonna hire and fire employees, if they're gonna hire and fire contractors, or some kind of management group to come in and run the shows, you know, it's how you set that authority up to say, you have the authority to run this expo center, soccer field, whatever you're putting out there, and manage it. And then you give them the discretion of how to manage it, whether they hire an employee or they contract it out, or you more specific and tell them exactly what to do. I think you can do that. And I think the authority, the recreational authority or whatever you're creating, has the ability to govern whatever this board is telling them to do. I think they are a public organization though, and they have to comply with procurement and all that stuff. Now, whether or not you can bid out someone to say, build the facility and run it for however many years, what would you charge us to do that? You know, and then get bids from different companies to do that. You know, as long as you follow procurement, you can potentially do that.
Well, you gave a good thumbnail, but those are really two separate functions. It might be that somebody can do that. One, to build it, needs a different set of job skills than you need to operate on a daily basis, although that could be the same group. Now, to give this a pure graphic of how it can save huge money is if you do a site plan. I agree you probably need a planner. Do they have to do all the work? Being in the business, I don't think you will ever get the money if you do a big contract to do a whole layout, architectural drawings and all that. I don't think you'll ever get good return on your money. That's my opinion from being in the business most of my life. But the other side is if you have the structure to build a building, we've done this on public jobs all over the state, and then some entity, not authority, but some entity hires your plumber, hires your electrician, hires your mechanical, and you can save a lot of money. You can save 25% because that's the markup a GC puts on it. After he's beat all the subs down to the lowest price he can, and you all know, I hope, that they go back and beat them up again after they get the bid. And that's why general contractors can be in business and have tremendous overhead. They go after work, other people do the work, they get paid for being a super administrator and bringing the job together. But an entity can do that and save 25% on the total cost of the development.
So you're asking that if the authority or whatever the commission be the general contractor?
Nope, I don't think they can, but they can contract with some other entity if what they're saying is, if you say that in their organizational method, then they can do it. But if you don't say it in the organizational method, then they probably can't do it after the fact. Is that pretty much what y'all said?
Yes, I think so. I think you can have to review the authority creation. Once you create it, you may be able to modify it at some point a little bit, you know, to give them a little additional authority that we forgot to give them in the beginning, or you want them going down a different road than what we initially thought they were, you know, 10 years later, can we change their purpose or authority a little bit? Maybe.
Well, Scott, that's sort of like when you incorporate a company. Their mission statement needs to be as wide as it can be.
Right.
And A&E firms, same way, you got to get a broad, this is what we intend to do to the State Corporation Commission. If you make it so restrictive, if you want to branch out in another form of the business or another service, it's some pretty heavy lifting to go back and change that. It's, Gary, that Coalfield Supply is the same thing. I'll bet you their incorporation papers say they can do just about anything between brain surgery and space flight. Because a good lawyer is going to put it as broad as he can, isn't he, Scott?
Yes.
But so I'm wondering if you don't have that same parameter philosophy in how we set up this authority. Not that the authority will do the work, but that they have the right to contract that work, because it is specialized work. Whoever builds the thing is not the same people that ought to be operating it. That's a plan for disaster to think you can, and I also think the authority shouldn't be in the day-to-day operation of it.
I think the authority will have the ability to enter into contracts.
Okay.
And that sounds like what you're saying is, can they enter into a contract for whatever, to build it, to operate it, to cut grass? I think they're gonna have the authority to do that.
But they'll have to follow the state procurement laws.
No, the authority, this is the whole question. The authority may have to cover the state procurement law, but whoever they contract with doesn't necessarily have to do that.
If the authority's paying them money paying that contractor, and that contractor's using the authority's money to buy services, I don't know the answer to that.
All right,
You may have to go through procurement.
let me ask a little question. What's the magic numbers that the initials we use for PP, what are design, build, deliver?
Public-private, triple P.
They don't do it that way.
Well, under the, I agree, Joe, the PPP was specifically designed to allow you to operate outside those procedures. Joe Hale could come to Wythe County today and say, if you're a contractor, say, I've heard you want a ag expo or exposition center. It's got a riding rink, an arena, ball fields, entrances, and parking. And they could throw out a proposal, a detailed proposal that would cost you $4 million. Immediately, then you have to go back out under request for proposals to see if there's anybody else
Mm-hmm.
to do that. The minute you decide, nobody, let's say nobody else showed up, and we awarded you $4 million, then you can, that entity, Joe Hill Incorporated, then you go out and get 3 brick masons, 4 concrete workers, get the prices from them, and take the lowest bid. But that doesn't get you that 25% savings for
No, it
the
doesn't.
GC that you're wanting, because what you're wanting is basically go out, and I'll give you an example. A guy from Chicago hired, 1984, hired me to be the clerk of the works or whatever, project manager. We started Petro down there. I asked for 5 people to give me prices for grading. We took the grading contract. Went from there to the footers, to the pipe, to everybody. I went to each individual, picked their specialty. Most of them are local guys. The guy that did the inside work of the buildings was local. And the only person that got paid was the clerk of the works on an hourly basis. But if I had a budget predetermined on the casework or finished work inside the building, if it was $50,000, the bid came in at 60, I started negotiating to get it to 50,000. That doesn't appear, and that saved the guy probably 25 or 30%. Because I was a lot cheaper than the general contractor. But I was the general contractor. Because I scheduled you in, whatever day it was. I had this massive thing. I just don't know how that works under procurement.
Well, you've said 2 things there. The second one I was going to bring up. Economics 101 says if you can introduce $1 into the community, what is it, Bill? Is it now 5 or 7?
Well, it was 7, I think it's a little less now, but yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay, it used to be 5 and then it went up, but if you introduce a new dollar into a community, by the time it gets through bouncing around to all the contributors of services, it's really worth a number, and we'll use 5, to the community. We're doing a thing here with incentives, and to keep as much of the casework, electrical and things local, just helps the local economy and helps local small businesses, which this is an example. You can go and check it. My firm 6 years ago, during the worst part for contractors, we built 3 gyms for Nottaway County, which Board of Supervisors approved $3 million to build 3 gyms and connectors to existing elementary schools. And for Nottaway County, that was a pretty courageous thing for them to do. And we got the job. And in our interview, I said, the only way we can do this is for y'all to give us a job and then get out of the way. And that's what it's all about. We let one contract for the shell of the building, and then we let multiple contracts for all the fit out. And they come in, all three of them, under budget, and we had money to return to the Board of Supervisors to help meet their debt service. And that's where the structure of how a job's handled is whether you can save money or not. You don't-
Basically, what you got was a guarantee, you gave them a guaranteed price not to exceed.
Nope. I don't have the money to guarantee $3 million. It was in their case, it was an act of faith that we could do, and they'll tell you, you know one of the leaders down there. They believed it could be done. A couple of good things, I've got to say this to make it honest. We got a couple of grants that weren't in the scope of work to pay. The state paid for all the generators to put emergency generators in. The economy for contractors going south certainly helped the jobs. If they'd have been the other way around, it wouldn't have been as easy to do. But the structure of it is that the general contractor only got a markup on the part of the work that he did. And then it's a heavier lift, as Salel can tell you, for the project manager. I don't like the word clerk of the works because he is pretty unique and not the average. That's a good word here, Salel. Unique project manager or clerk of the works. Most clerk of the works don't earn their money, and you give up a whole lot of legal status when an entity hires a clerk of the works. I can argue that one all day, but this function to save that kind of money is what I want to make sure we look at.
Well, let me ask a more elemental question, and what are we doing? I mean, we're talking about, things on down the road, but I mean, what are we doing? What do we need to vote on? What do we need to, what do we need to do? I mean, because if we don't have the cart before the horse, I think the horse is, walking beside the cart. I just want to know, what we're doing.
Number one, I'd say, do you create this authority? How fast can it be created? What is it for? Without the authority, the only way we can proceed is if we get the money, is make it a department of the county and bid it now.
Right.
The authority, the commission, and I think that creation of that follows what we were told when we visited these places. It'll never work with the county running it. It's got to be a third.
Well, we were actually told it would never work if the county paid for it. I mean, that's what we were told. And that's another question. I mean, I guess, another thing that I'm asking is there a model anywhere in the country like this that's been successful and fiscally responsible and with a return?
I don't know. I know the one in Morristown, Tennessee, the Bibles, which is a family, actually paid for the whole facility and gave it to college. They built it on college property. And it's pretty easy to make it run when you have no expenses to start with. And you know the story of Chatham.
Right.
Just like I do, the tobacco commission and the local people funded it, and there was no debt service.
And the Board of Supervisors made in-kind contributions by putting water and sewer in.
And paying rent for the
And-
extension and farm services
Right.
which was the ongoing operating expenses of how it really functioned. Those are the two models that I've seen.
Which is really not anything like what we're talking about.
No.
Well, if that's the first thing we got to do is form an authority or a commission or whatever, then I guess we can open the floor up for a motion to form that.
I think it's, you gotta make a decision whether you wanna do that or not. Yeah, is that the way you wanna go? Yeah, it sounds like that's sort of a recommendation from wherever else you looked at.
Well, I mean, what other, how other, that's the way we've been talking about doing this all along, is the county's not, we appoint the people to the authority to the commission, but they will take, as far as the day-to-day operation and hiring somebody to run it, manage it, promote it, is up to them.
But we've never voted on it,
No. We
so
have not.
they don't.
And I guess the second issue, to create a recreation authority, y'all have that memo from Scott and the memo from Webster Day that you could do that. My question is the recreation authority, how, when you create it, can you make it just for that function alone? Or does it deal with the whole recreation? I guess the other opportunity you have is you currently have IDA, with county IDA, not the joint IDA. They could serve almost the same function. Just call it economic development. And that would be
Change it to what, with EDA?
Well, no, it'd just be an economic development, that would be their charge.
They would just manage the project.
So we already have that, we don't have to reinvent it.
I think Scott needs to look at it, but, I mean, I think that's only two opportunities you have.
But he said, and they would run it. No, we don't want them to run it, but they could build it. Is that what you meant to say?
I didn't mean to say one thing or the other, I'm just saying, that's my interpretation of what you guys have been saying today. You want an authority to run the expo center.
No. Are you saying run it or operate it?
Operate it.
Operate it, hire somebody else to run it, whatever. You've got some governing body that's making decisions for the expo center that's not you.
Right.
Whether that's hiring employees, hiring a contractor, whatever they're doing. You got someone else making that decision. It's not the Wood County Board of Supervisors.
That's correct.
Right.
But that authority, in my opinion, cannot day-to-day operate. I don't think they have, and that's what I think Salil referred to earlier. It won't work that way. If that authority has to schedule an auto show in there, or they have to schedule something for 50 weeks out of the year, that's not a function I think that an authority can do. That's got to be somebody, some company's job to operate it and sell hot dogs and put the events in. That's a private sector function possibly, but it's got to be somebody other than an authority, in my opinion, for it to work.
Or an executive director or some kind of employee to do that. You're talking about hiring an outside company to come in and run the day-to-day operations. If you had hired, if the authority or whatever's created hires an employee, like the executive director of the Ag Expo Center or the manager of the Ag Expo Center, whatever you give him, he gets a salary and his job is to cut the grass and schedule the events and make sure things are happening.
But if we went that route, who would his employees be working for?
Him.
The commission, the recreation authority or whoever you're appointing, that's who their employer is.
Right,
You
so,
guys are funding the money or their profits are funding those employees or expenses.
so then, what my mind is thinking, that would get us into payroll for that authority, that would get us into a lot of other things that would, like line of duty, workman's
Not
comp.
for us. That's just like, it wouldn't be for us, would it?
It's an expense of the authority. Wythe County or the authority itself is gonna create income. You got this pool of money out here, the authority's got this pool of money, and they're gonna go hire someone to operate the day-to-day. They're either paying a contractor, or whatever you wanna call them, to run the day-to-day operations, a flat fee, and they don't have to worry about insurance or taxes or anything else. They're paying somebody else to take care of that, or they're kind of doing that on their own, and they're paying these expenses of a business or an employer. It's a decision that board would make as to, can I save money by hiring employees, or can I save money by hiring some company to come in and run the show?
Okay,
So, like, your first day of office. So under that scenario you're talking about, Joe, is Wythe County BOS, we would own the facility, we would lease it to this authority, commission, whatever. That commission then will bid out the operation, day-to-day operations, under some kind of bid specs that says you will provide the staff, the maintenance, the mowing, the event planning, et cetera, all encompassed. And we're gonna give you blank dollars to do that. And then who gets the money for if they're operating for you, who gets the admissions or all that other stuff? The money coming back, is the operation people?
well, that would depend on whether you gave them startup money and operation money. I wouldn't give them, if you have a facility ready to go, why would you put somebody in business by giving them their operation money?
Well, Chatham's not operated like that. Chatham is hired, they hired the director, and the commission hires the director, and don't the commission review the events and stuff that the director brings them to the,
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that, but that decision needs to be made. There's two ways to go. But right now, at the inset of what we're gonna do, we need to make those decisions and not let them pop up later, how you're gonna get to the end result. That's part, I think that's part of forming the authority. What's the function of the authority?
Decision. Okay, let's say y'all direct the county attorney to draft up a public hearing, some organizational articles of incorporation of what their function is, and bring it back to the next board meeting. Then once you agree upon what their function is, hold a public hearing. But I think it's inherent, before you create that authority, to know whether you're gonna use an operational operator or you're gonna hire staff.
That's my question. You gotta decide
I
now.
don't know the answer to that.
You mean hire staff in their county employees?
No.
The authority would have.
Oh,
Like the PSA employee,
okay, all right.
water authority.
Or the JIDA.
But we don't really have, I mean, we don't have a figure on the cost of this thing, really, other than, I know that's like the $7.2 million, you take $750,000 off from the Tobacco Commission, $250,000 from this, from the, Ag Expo Committee, $150,000 from the Farm Bureau, $350,000 for, let's say, the Wythe Bland, comes through that money. That's my quick figures, that's still $5.7 million, and you don't, that's counting, the land, so we paid $1.3 million for it, so it still leaves us with $4.4 million. Is that a ballpark figure?
Ballpark figure, and if you got an authority out there, let's just consider, just like the JIDA, you've got a funding mechanism to pay for their staff. The first year, somebody's gonna have to pay for the staff, right? Because it's like any business plan I developed and take it to the bank today for Artie. I've gotta have capital operating money to make it a year.
Yep.
I cannot start at zero and think I can make it. Just cannot do it. So you've gotta have some kind of capital money for that staff, because you're gonna have an event, you're gonna get a little money in, but it's gonna take time to build those events up that you're gonna break even. Let's just be realistic. We may bring bulls in there and we may make $10,000, but next week I may have dogs in there and lose $5,000.
But the 501(c), that money was going to operate it for the first year or so.
So then we really only have $750,000.
So then we take that out. Okay, all right. I don't, to me, I know I sound negative about this, but it just seems like it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and with no clear plan, because we get income through leasing. Is that what we're talking about? The income from the county? If we buy the land, build a building, the road and all that stuff, whether it's through grants or not, our income would be based on leasing it to the authority?
Well, if you think you're gonna be able to lease it to an authority and make money for a while, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, I'm not even talking about for a while, but I mean, is that the revenue stream for us? Because if we own it, it's taken out of the tax base. So there's no real estate tax. We're not going to collect real estate tax on that on the land or on the buildings or anything that we own down there. So I mean, our revenue from this would come from the lease. Is that? I'm asking. Is that where our revenue would come from?
Well, I think ultimately we want to see meals and lodging.
And
You have revenue from the weekend events, you have a horse show, car show, whatever, you're gonna have people come in there, I assume they're gonna pay some kind of fee. That fee would go either to the operator or to the commission who's trying to manage and run the facility. So hopefully at some point it would be self-sufficient, right, and generate enough income to function and pay its expenses.
But
we
don't,
we discussed a emission tax.
Right. You have
Admission
overflow from that.
Admission
Tax
tax.
on admission
Admission
or rooms
tax.
and meals.
Admission.
Because if you get more hotels in the community, you can do a rooms tax or a meals tax that would potentially spring up around this facility to serve the people coming. And the county would be able to generate or receive income from those taxes that currently are in place. There's just not a lot of places to collect money from because they're mostly in hand. I don't know if that addresses it. That's my understanding of what's happening.
well, but my question holds. The income that we would get from it is through leasing it. Is that what we're saying?
I don't think so, Gary. I think the leasing would be one revenue stream.
I'm not talking about outside, I'm talking about for this
I'm
facility
not
itself. Okay.
We can also put an attendance tax on that zone. What you're really interested in is, can we get the money back, right?
I'm interested in all honesty, being responsible to the taxpayers of Wythe County, that, that it's not, and for lack of a better word, I'll use this albatross.
Well, I would hope a man of your education could come up with a better word.
I'm
But,
sorry.
let's just play this for a minute. Do we still have that capital fund in place? Can this be done with bonds, or can if we voted to allocate a loan, not a grant, to that authority to go on and build it out? Because I don't think you can do this piecemeal. It's got to be first class to create the kind of atmosphere that'll get people coming back. Even with that bearing some interest, then you know a number, Gary, that you gotta have revenue to pay that back. You agree with that?
Yeah.
So, you know, the overall economic development idea is much bigger than operation and what you're gonna sell a hot dog for. It has some intrinsic value that this is a happening place and we got something going on and we're thinking toward the future. And I happen to personally believe that will help swing some people to come to the industrial park. If we quit saying negative things about there's nobody here to take the jobs and silliness like that, but I think this could be the impact to really start the whole economic development, including the corridor, which we've already done all the heavy lifting, got everything in place for the corridor to grow. This could be the kickoff for the biggest growth, and I'm not going to go this wild because you'd faint. But 25 years ago, would you ever thought the growth of Bristol would have happened out Route 11 like it did?
No, and it does seem like most places grow to the east. Now, I don't know why, but that does seem, you know.
Don't go and tell me it's something about Mecca now.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
But
But just sheer revenue, though, I mean, just for this, for the county's part, none of the extraneous things that may happen. Again, are we looking at the revenue that comes to the county just from the leasing? Or the operational money revenue would go to the authority? Is that right?
Well, the revenue they generate is going to have to support it.
Right, right. It'll go to the authority, and they will use the money to run that and to pay the light bill and do you know, maintenance and to attract other events, and that operational money after the first year. I understand that, but that will go to them. Again, I mean, our revenue stream from this would be the lease.
No.
Okay, then
If we do a long-term lease with the commission or authority or whatever we call it, I don't think that lease is not what we're looking at to generate money from. I mean, we're looking at that what is going to build around it, and also the emissions tax that we could put on ticket sales. I mean, that's a source of revenue for the county. But what we're looking at is growth in the whole corridor around this is.
And I agree with that. I understand that, but I'm just talking about specifically this facility. It will be the an admission tax and the lease.
okay, let's just say it is.
Okay, well, that's fine.
I mean, what kind of a lease are we going to do? Like the park, $1 for 99 years? But I mean, what kind of a lease are we talking about, or what are we going to charge the authority?
Well, not putting words in Gary's mouth, but anybody else's. It was, let's take Aurora Tree Fair Association. You gave them a lease personal opinion, only business plan that makes sense. Till that building's paid off or something, you're gonna have to charge them some kind of lease fee. That's my opinion, and give them, because if they have nothing, then it's all going to operations. They've gotta have some investment in that building. And so, whether, let's say you borrowed the money from yourself or somebody else, and you're paying 2% interest. And I heard Joe say that you wasn't gonna piecemeal, you're just gonna do it all.
I said use about $5 million and do all of phase one.
Okay.
Bill's at 7 million, I'm at 5 million. The truth is pretty close to one or the other. But he's got everything in his budget. There won't be any surprises with his budget.
Okay, so the annual debt service payment would be $333,000 on 5 years. Even if you paid yourself back what you're currently earning interest. If you look at today's savings report, treasurer's report, it says we have general fund balance, 26,470,000, plus we've got $6 million basically in other funds, gives you 32,574. You got an agreement with the bank, the bond council, for your current loans, it says you'll never go below 28 million bucks. So there's 4.5 million bucks difference in there. So that basically tells me you gotta go, instead of dipping in and getting close to your non-compliance with bonds, you borrow the money. That's my simple math. Because the rest of that money is water department money, water bond proceeds, CDs in the bank for VDOT, the DSS building, blah, 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 forfeit asset. While it shows up on our account, it's really not money you can tap into. So my belief is if you went out and created the authority and you borrowed the $5 million, part of the agreement is they gotta pay, generate enough money to pay them debt service.
Well, certainly.
And then they can, what's above that is their operational.
But we also have the potential from the tobacco commission for every dollar that we spend.
And the other part of that is, Gary, don't call me an optimist here, is that every year we find enough grants or stuff to offset that, basically. Let's say we went to the Farm Bureau, the State Farm Bureau, and said we needed $100,000 a year to offset this debt service for 20 years. They agreed to pay it. I mean, that's the kind of thing you gotta go after.
What did you say the debt service be at 2%?
333,
Okay.
20 years.
Which they're going to get their revenue not only through the events, but also through this fundraising arm, which can potentially go to pay the debt servicing.
So if you create, you've got to believe, number one, you borrowed the money, but they're gonna pay it back, make those payments, and that be part of the structure. And part of the structure is that they can't come ask you to borrow it every year to pay it, they just gotta pay it. Then, except for the initial debt service out there on the county ledger side, you've got a wash, is what I call it. They're generating the money they pay. That's the only, Gary, that's the only way it works. The second part of that is that this facility would generate additional motels and restaurants there that would up the ante. Those hidden revenues that you're gonna generate. And what you can also do, if there's 500, let's just say there's 500 people attended the place a week for 50 weeks, 2 nights a weekend, that's 52,000, yeah, 52,000 people. If it was, admissions tax was $1 or $2, that's part of the 300,000 bucks. But it's gotta be structured so that, I think we've heard from everybody, it's gotta be structured so that it's self-sustaining. The Board of Supervisors cannot subsidize it. If you're gonna subsidize it, just run it yourself.
No.
And
There's one other revenue stream that might help Gary, and you're aware of this, I'm sure. Farm Service wants to move out there in total. That makes total sense to me to have all farm services out there paying rent. And I don't know, Jeremy could answer this. I don't know that was even in their budget because it wasn't proven. They're paying about $7,000 where they are. And that, if you knocked it down to 6 to pay the electric bill and the janitorial service, whatever they're not paying in their lease now.
you mean $7,000 a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, they was more than that.
Well, the number I've got, 7,000 is what they're
That was
paying
just for
one agency.
one agency.
But, you know, I don't know that to be accurate, so I'm using the less number. I don't play games with optimism on real money, but we know that there's, from one agency, they're paying 7,000. It may be as high as, wasn't the number 23,000 a month for all of them. Well, there's a great part, if that's true, is a great part of your debt service just paid by that one agency being located out there, which makes total sense to me to have farm services out there. So let's talk about, we're getting in the weeds anyway, but erroneously, we're talking about a 50,000 square foot building when we're really talking about a 60,000 square foot building. But if we make 2 decisions correctly to begin with, we can expand that by another 30,000 feet to be office space, rental space, meeting rooms. You're with me, aren't you, Bill? Do the oversized footer on the current walls. Go on and have the clips welded on. So if we decide a year from now, 2 years from now to add that 30,000 square feet, it's going to have a rough drying cost of about $18 a square foot instead of $34 a square foot. And then how you treat the inside of it, if you make your meeting rooms this nice, you put in a factor for that. But that's just for a shell that we can rent to farm service. And can we get a commitment out of them to come out there? I don't know whether you can or not. But I know we ought to be thinking about that. That's a way to pay the debt service or help pay it. We've got other, can we go with making a couple of decisions, Mr. Chairman? I think motion 1 needs to be that we form the authority. Is that correct?
authority form like you're gonna form, I mean, really, I mean, you can still put the brakes on it at the time you say, vote to have a public hearing to create it. Or I can create the documents, we talk about it some more, and then do a public hearing later, or set it in, or however, but I think that's, the direction can be, for me, to create everything you need to get this authority created, and bring it back, and discuss it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we form an authority that Mr. Farley bring back prior to setting a public hearing, that for us to work out any details that we disagree with, but at least give him the authority or the direction to go forward.
Okay. I have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Motion passes.
Now, Mr. Dalton, do we need to talk about, at this time, giving you the authority to look for sources of funding so we'll know what's available and what it's gonna cost?
We don't even have, I'll go get that information and bring it back to you. It's easy enough to just call 4 or 5 banks and see what the rate is. Whatever they quote will always be 0.5% less than
Scott, have you researched that the way we set this authority up may be a function of whether we can get a tax refund from sales tax or not? Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
Well, please research that as you set it up. There's a state law that if it's a recreational facility, is that correct?
I'm listening, keep on talking.
If it's a recreational facility, there's some little unique state law that will allow you to get half your sales tax paid directly back to you. And that would help take care of the debt service. But I'm sure it's there, I just don't know where it is.
Well, this is what I know, that Bristol got, and 2 or 3 other places have got special legislation to allow that sales tax, additional sales tax to be put on that facility, and you get it back. That's what Bristol is doing, and giving it all back. The entity, the 2 entities that moved in there. And that,
I believe what you're talking about is something different. Scott, if you can't find it, I'll go back to my source and try to find page and chapter.
One of them copies.
yeah, I guess I was gonna talk a little bit about we're just looking at the authority, get everybody briefed on the master plan and actual, what the projected cost of this thing was. Seems like we settled in at $5 million.
Is the 5 million in addition to or including the 1.3 for the land?
He's got it broken out.
Oh.
Two windows out there.
Got 2 things here. The first one was when this all started,
sales
I'd
and
like to
agriculture
clarify that.
folks. And they did basically a zero-based cost
Ten
estimate
games.
with the square footages and the size of things that they asked for. And it's a big number, but as Joe said, you know, it should be all in there. So
That's what you're looking at.
Annual income on that building, we talked about that in farm services, $78,000 a year.
the front page on the left is the rundown on it. And there was, at the beginning, we had a couple of things where we kind of phased it 1 and 2, kind of get it going and then do a build out. The next sheet, this is what we went through with all the reductions, the what ifs, we can get a shell, rah, grants and things that we came up with. How could we eat the elephant, so to speak, if we got grants? So this is what we started with. This is what the last figures were that we were working with, that Jeremy worked with, trying to get money, grants, and you see how we kind of economize, cut corners, how can we phase it, how can we get other people's money, OPM, we'll call it, and things like that. We're not gonna get a copy of the plan, right?
Yes. Joe, you wanted to clarify something?
Yeah, for the record, Gary, you asked a question, and I'd like to clarify. My motion for $5 million was for construction, and we can't tack on other things. That's for construction. That's what the motion was.
Okay, I thought the motion was to form the authority.
Okay, the motion was, but when we discussed the $5 million, which you brought up, you didn't say anything about authority. You said it's the purchase of the land part of the number. That's why.
Oh, yeah, that,
So clarification of what we're talking about was for $5 million for construction.
okay, in addition to the cost of the land, basically. But now, there hadn't been a motion on that yet?
No.
Okay,
no,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
On the first sheet I gave you, the original discussion today, that showed we talked about half the size of the facility, but what was 30,000 versus 60. But I think in discussions with folks that, you know, if you need to get that full build out for 60,000, is well met.
No, that wasn't what I said. The building's always stayed at 60,000 for the arena. What I'm talking about, the additional 30,000 would be for meeting rooms and rental space, and that would create revenue, and it would also give us a 90,000 square foot building. I just didn't want anybody to misunderstand.
Right, built into the 60,000, you have a standard arena size, but then you
Right.
have some infill around it.
Right.
You're gonna talk about adding to the infill to generate more rental space and things like that.
Yeah, if you go with the plan, that key plan's what you've drawn, we got a 200 by 300 foot building. That's what it takes to do the arena. That's gonna be a freestand, clear stand building. It's very cost effective to go ahead and make 2 engineering decisions right now. And when it happens is a function of economics. That we add a 50-foot or a 40-foot structure on both sides. If we stick with a 22-foot eave height, you can drop down and go from a 2.5 to 1 slope on the main structure to a 1.5, 1.5 inches to 1 on the shed, and still have plenty of head height for office space, meeting rooms, and to be able to get your mechanical up there and do a nice drop ceiling or whatever you choose. But that would also give us opportunity to put some lights along that section so you could have some natural light in there. The problem with natural light, you normally lose heating capability. So maybe that thought needs to be moderated to a minimum of natural light instead of doing a band all the way across the building. Similar to what the one is at Tech.
Some form of indirect natural light.
Right.
That will change the primary facility cost, because that's kind of the need to generate funds.
Well, yeah, it may. If we add it now to get the revenue to pay the debt service, it'll change the big number now. But if we choose to not do it, then it's for the future sometime.
So as he said, that primary facility cost is based on the initial concept of 60,000.
Yep. And to reiterate that 2,024,000, we have a letter from a contractor unsolicited that they would do the shell and the insulation for $970,000. That's no concrete floor in it, that's no lighting, no mechanical, no plumbing, no toilets, but just a shell building, a 60,000 square foot shell building is a great big building, guys. It's, so what out at the park is comparable to that?
Well, the first, building out there we built, WTI started out on the road was 50,000.
Out on Pepper Ferry Road. So if you want to look at something that give you an idea of how big it is.
Add 10,000 on each side, the last WTI built where Summit's at now is 75, so that's almost exactly the same facility, plus it's got the front drop down,
Mm-hmm.
drop space.
Bill, on this, on this one, the front page is a scaled down version.
Yeah, that was, to get things, to apply for the grants, that was the fifth or sixth iteration that we went through. And get Jeremy good numbers for the grant plan, et cetera. That is scaled down, economy of scale, things like that.
got awful quiet. What are you looking at? What now?
Well, I was looking for this, how many times Code Virginia, I was looking for this recreation tax. Okay, I guess our orders are, I'll summarize it. Scott's gonna pull up this, information on the authority and creation, and bring it back next meeting. I'm gonna dig up what it's gonna cost to borrow $5 million, and bring it back to the next meeting, be on the agenda. Marching orders for, I guess, the time being for this subject, right?
Do we need to do anything else? Is that enough to keep you busy for a couple of weeks?
I think that'd be plenty. We'll be looking, we'll also be looking at these funding mechanisms and tax issues too.
And you said Farm Services is paying $78,000 a year for the rent.
It's I looked it up, it's 8,414 square feet for the total building, the Rural Development Farm Service, DCR, Soil Big Walker, Soil Conservation. All of them pay the same, give you that total rent there. Pretty confident, it's 78,000.
Healthy chunk. Well, if that's all we're gonna do on the Regional Exposition Center, then we got, workforce training.
Well, workforce training is, and Joe's brought it up several times, several industries brought it up. It may be one of those issues that, those development authority of the schools that we sit down, like, these plant managers and see what kind of programs that the schools can do at the vocational school, welding or machine or whatever, and find out what it's gonna take to get that implemented in the school system. It can't come free, so they're gonna have to change the ways that there's equipment or teachers or joint dual credits where they go to the community college. We need to get that figured out prior to budget for next year so that we can include some money for that.
So we need, what you're saying is set up a meeting with industry and the school system
Yep.
and us.
And you are talking about the County Industrial Development Committee. Okay.
Well, the whole
Mr. Hall.
issue there is that if you're doing vocational, whether it be jointly, and I heard Dr. Sprinkle say accreditation is number one, but we operate on the budget year. If we start now, time we budget gets here, we may have some numbers. If we wait till the budget gets here, we'll just have another wasted year on this vocational thing. I think we've got to shoot for dual credits so that when they finish high school, that they got some kind of certification,
Right.
that they have a skill that they can market. It's, I think we got it put off of here, we didn't get the EMT thing in the school, but I think that and this vocational training for whether it's through systems training or machine shop, whatever it is, it's got to be through the community college so that when the people graduate, they say, I've got my diploma, 2 year, I can go to work. My certification's here.
I think it has a great value for JIDA, even if we've got a committee working with existing industry, that's our plan. that we at least can see the future enough to know that education's gotta be a major part of it to train the workforce. So even if we can't implement it until sometime next year, the planning this year and with Millie's help writing things in the paper, that we're doing something to help develop the workforce.
And you know, and I don't know how we do this or whatever, but I tell you another thing that I think that is lacking a little bit, and I don't know where we emphasize it or whatever, but are some of these soft skills. You know, how to get along with people, how to work, you know, in a group, how to work as a team, how to, you know, how to treat, you know, customers or business people or you know, things like that.
You know, along those lines, you could write into a program at the high school level how to dress for an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And how to do an interview. Those are teachable functions, I think, that we're not doing now. You know, I had a young lady need a job bad. She had 2 children and a husband that wouldn't work. I offered her a job, and immediately she asked me about the fringe package. And I said, well, the fringe package is you're going to get a check every Friday. That was sort of abrupt, but it was the wrong time to ask that question,
Mm-hmm.
my point is. And young people today, and Artie, I'm not insulting you here, but I've had
I'm not
many of
young
them come in at 21, 22 years old, want to know what our retirement looked like. Well, when I was 21 years old, I didn't think I'd live long enough to get to retirement. So that's not a good question to do at an interview, is what's your retirement package?
But that's a smart thing to be thinking about when you're 21.
Well,
If you ever want to
but you
retire.
don't do it the first thing. You want to impress people that you want a job and you want to be upward mobile, not come in and say, I'm already thinking about retirement, hire me. I don't want to hire those people.
Well, you know, the schools, and I'm going to be a little bit critical here because I was there when it happened. They used to have those career days. I don't know if they still do those or not, but basically it was where businesses would come in and kids would it was just like a herd of cattle going through, and it was more of a showcase for business than it was anything because, you know, my argument was always that we need to get them to, you know, write down, give a list of the skills that you need. You know, if you need through Algebra 2, put down, you know, through Algebra 2, you know, and that sort of thing. And also, how many jobs they look like they will, you know, they'll have in the future. I mean, you know, a kid doesn't want to spend all day talking to somebody who's not going to hire anybody for the next 5 years. So, you know, anytime that we do something with business or industry like that, I think if we can get them to be more specific than general, we'll be better off.
And I think it's always good if you're going, even for adults going to job fairs, there's an opportunity. We're going to be hiring 10 people in the
Yep.
next year. These are the kind of skills you need. That gives me or whoever an opportunity to work on those skills.
Yeah, and even if it's, you know, tell a high school kid that, you know, you need a degree in, you know, environmental technology or whatever if you're going to work, you know, for us. And here's where you can get that program and that sort of thing. So, you know, they are responsible for helping to build that, you know, that educated workforce too.
But on workforce training, I think that's, get started earlier, let's move forward with our economic development committee, and if we're really interested in that, we know we're marketing for future businesses and industry, that guys that need to work in electronics or electrical. I mean, we've got to work with community college and be sure that everybody's being trained. And I guess just the last piece, I went over and met with the foundation people, with Land Foundation last week. And I was specifically talked about what they're, where they could fit in with retraining adults. I mean, we've got a lot of people that need retraining, and I know we have a program that graduate from the high schools, and been here 2 years, but it's just as important to be retraining the adult population of the county for jobs and having some money out there. And Travis basically agreed with that. It's how we go about setting it up. But I think that's something we need to plan, because a lot of times young families, the detriment is, I'm busy working. The job, I gotta continue to work at this job. I don't have enough money or time, or maybe money to spend nights paying the community college to better myself. So I think we've got to address those adults too, to find a way to, so they can get re-educated or retrained. It's just not the kids. We're graduating 320 kids a year from high school, but ever since I've been here for 20 years, we've graduated 320, so if half of those people need to be retrained, we need
There's
to
a
be
lot.
looking at that.
So what kind of time frame are you talking about?
I think this is coming up,
Got,
if we can
got a call.
meet with Travis a couple more times and see if we can identify underemployed people through the JIDA. We can set up some kind of application and pool of money for the foundation. The problem the foundation has is that Wythe Land Foundation is subsidizing every surrounding community with we pay the Wythe Land Foundation will pay the tuition, and all the available tuition and grants that would go to Wythe County kids, because they would qualify, end up going to Grayson or Carroll or Bland or someplace that, because the college sees the Wythe Land Foundation, anybody coming out of high school, they're gonna pay for it. We'll take our money and use it someplace else. So really, we're taking Wythe County money that should have been generated from a Wythe County student and giving it to the surrounding counties. So I understand that part, and I told Travis I'd bring it up, but he has to attack that problem with the community college, not the county. But it is a means to free up some money if we got the tobacco money that should have been coming to Wythe County residents, other grants that are actually, the foundation were funded through Wythe County citizens and businesses, but they're going to out of county people. What a unique problem.
Is that all that we got on workforce training?
Yes, sir.
Contracts. Anybody have any questions? Okay, anything else? So we're done? Okay, does anybody have anything else to bring up at this time? If not, we'll recess until Monday the 28th at 5:30 PM.